Getting the last iHeart radio station you listen to. Dance Nation 90s.
Happy Pride.
Woo! Good morning, everybody. Today it's May 10th. It's May the 10th, and we're getting it cranked up. We have some special guests, 3 guests actually, and of course I need to introduce our host and producer, Cano.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to Coffee and Ponduce. Today is June the 10th. It is April and May just flashed by, just like the Panther season. Oh, I had a shot. How about just like the Hornet season? I guess the only really good teams we have are the Knights, right? Is that the Knights do? Anyway, welcome. Today is June the 10th. It is Wednesday, and we are in Pride Month all around the country. Even though, long story, Charlotte doesn't celebrate Pride until August. Atlanta doesn't celebrate Pride until September. Texas doesn't celebrate Pride until September. So no one celebrates Pride in June except maybe DC. Right? Is that right?
DC, New York, LA, and San Francisco still do their major prides. I can't remember when Chicago does theirs.
All the cool cities.
Well, spread them out too. I mean, one of the things is, and I'm not going to end, they organize Pride a member of, and we've tried to, in hot weather cities, start doing them in the winter, like Fort Lauderdale does theirs in February, and so on and so forth, just so that people can go around and see all the prides and not have them all on the same weekend. Kind of doesn't make sense to do that anymore.
Oh, well, I didn't realize it was organized. I thought it was just because it's too darn hot.
No, there's actually a method. There's actually a reason why Charlotte Pride does their Pride.
Okay.
In August,
Hey,
versus June.
Hey, Jenny.
It is to not steal.
I'm having some feedback from you, so I apologize. I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't know if anybody else is hearing that. I haven't checked this on Facebook yet. But anyway, once again, welcome to Coffee and Ponduce. And as we normally do on Coffee and Ponduce, if you were sitting around the table, we would go around yourself, introduce your imaginary button. And 30 seconds are left because I do have a bell somewhere around it. Oh, good job. So if you're looking at your Coffee and Ponduce screen, my understanding is we have the following people in this order. We have Jenny-Jaymes Gunn, we have Janice Robinson, we have Kyle Kirby, and Commissioner Jerrell. So in that area, in that, you can follow instructions. I know some of you are teachers. So let's go around.
Hi, I am Jenny-Jaymes Gunn. I represent Charlotte Pride and the National Organization of Women in Charlotte. My 2 buttons, if I was going to wear 2 buttons, would definitely be Moms Demand Action for gun sense laws. It's way past time. And then the most important one is Medicare for All. COVID and so many other things that are going on have highlighted the need for Medicare for All. Janice?
Okay, yeah, hi, good evening, good morning, and thank you so much for inviting me, Christian. And it's great to be on with the other panel members. Again, my name is Janice Robinson. By profession, I'm an occupational therapist for the last 26 years. And I also chair Precinct 148 with the Democratic Party out here in Valentine. 4 years ago, I started, well, after who got in office, I decided, okay, I need to step in and become precinct chair and start organizing. So I organized my precinct, and I've organized several precincts around me out here in Valentine. Precinct 148 is one of the largest precincts in the state, and we really have an impact out here when it comes to elections. And I'm proud to say that Valentine is pretty much now blue, so we've been working very hard out here. You all may know that this past Sunday, last Thursday morning, I woke up and said, hey, we need to have a march out here in Valentine. So some wonderful ladies reached out to me and said, Janice, we will help. And so we pulled together a march out here in Valentine to show solidarity to the Black Lives Matter movement and to show our disgust what had happened to George Floyd and so many other of our Black men and women at the hands of police, who basically his responsibility is to keep us safe. So, so that's pretty much, I guess that's why I'm here today.
Excellent.
That topic.
Well, thank you. Mr. Kirby.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Kirby. I'm the Republican nominee for House District 102. If you don't know where House District 102 is, that is basically Central Charlotte, Plaza Midwood, Country Club Heights, Atando Junction, Optimus Park, that sort of thing over there in the centralized area right in the center of Mecklenburg County. I'm also an alternate delegate for the Republican National Convention and a lifelong Charlottean. I was born there at Presbyterian Hospital, and I sure am glad to be back on the show with everybody. Looking forward to talking about these issues today and having some great dialogue.
Commissioner.
Hey, everybody. Great to be back. I'm excited for today's conversation. My name is Mark Jerrell. I serve you on the Board of County Commissioners, District 4, which is the eastern part of Mecklenburg County, starting at Center City and then going east. So think about Monroe Road, Central Avenue, Albemarle Road, Independence, all those great corridors that incorporate this great county of ours. And so it's an exciting time in our community. And my imaginary button is Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. I want to say that. Thank you, Christian. I appreciate that. It's important. It's important for us to be able to say that. And it's important for us to take advantage of the times that we're living in. So glad to be here.
Excellent. I expect a very wonderful conversation, neighborly conversation. Kyle Kirby for joining us. It's always wonderful to have all points of views here at this table at Casa de Cano, or as we call the CDC. And so thank you, Kyle, for coming back on the show. And we've got Matthew Ridenhour, we've got Tony Rushing, who I really like Tony Rushing because remember the stories he told us about how the Dukes of Hazzard started in Union County, and that was a really cool story. And so we've had some great people on the show, but we've got a Libertarian candidate for president on the show who did not get the nomination. Jacob Hornsberger did not get the nomination, but he was on the show. He's a Libertarian candidate. So, as we always do, coffee and Pondicherry around our neighbors, let's salute with the coffee cup or whatever you're drinking. Salute to coffee and Pondicherry as though we were.
And Chris, I'm getting quite a bit of feedback on your mute.
On me?
Yes.
Okay. I know why. There we go. Are we good?
Yeah. Much
Yes,
better.
I knew where it was. Okay. Sorry, Jenny. All right. So we're practicing social distancing here, and Jenny is broadcasting from the other end of the living room. So after this show, we have our other show, so we have to jump in the truck with our face masks, our face coverings, and so we're working with kind of like logistics here. I also want to remind everyone that we are sponsored by Manolo's Bakery, a locally owned small business in Charlotte on
East Charlotte.
In East Charlotte, that's right.
District 4. Thank you.
Oh, hey, excellent. Manolo's Bakery. I have been
What's it called again? What's it called again?
Manolo's Bakery.
No.
And they've been around for many, many years. They're immigrant owned. All their food is made by immigrant hands, from tres leche cakes to tamales to, I know them for their pan dulce, which is sweetbread, and then a lot of Mexican sweetbread that they have, which is one of them is called the concha. It is things that every kid grows up with. I actually went out and bought a bunch of this is Manolo's Bakery, and the concha always goes.
Doggone virus.
The pink concha always goes to Tara Long and her little girl because they're just really big. But the funny thing is, for those who've been watching the last month of shows, I've had this concha that's been decorated with the Mexican flag for Cinco de Mayo, and I've been freezing it, and I've been using that one, and so we no longer have to use the frozen one, so now we get to use fresh one. So let's jump into the conversation, because this is very important for us to talk about. Today's topic is, can you support the people who are marching and protesting for justice and I guess we could say police reform or just reform in general. I hate to keep using the word police because it's, in my view, it's not just all about the police. It just happens to be some of the faces that, that we see in these situations, but can you support them and also support the police? And it's kind of the question really is, yes, you can, and I believe, yes, you can. And the reason I say that is because it seems like there's this false narrative that's been going around by individuals that want to make it as if though we can't chew gum and walk at the same time, that we can't be out there supporting our neighbors for justice or equality or whatever the issue is. And we also, that means if you did that, you don't support the police, or if you support the police, you don't support justice and reform. So that's really why the question is. So who would like to start in 30 seconds or less? And I guess give us your answer. And what do you think about that false narrative? We have Janice raising her hand.
Yes, you can. And yes, we did this past Sunday. Matter when I started thinking about organizing the march out here in Valentine, I thought about all the players that I would need to work with in order to make a good a march and make it safe and make it community focused. So I actually worked with the Mecklenburg, CMPD. I organized my neighborhood watch program about 10 years ago. And so I have a relationship with these guys. And so I reached out to them, reached out to Captain Wagner, and actually they kind of helped me coordinate the route. And so yes, yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Yeah, if I could also, just dovetail into that, I see a lot of people saying, Black Lives Matter, and then they reply with the whole all lives matter. Well, yes, all lives matter, but right now Black lives need our help. I will say very plainly, we have an issue in this country, and I want to step forward as a Republican, and I want to step forward as somebody who is involved in conservative people, and I want to help educate those people to understand what's going on. I see so many people out there right now saying this on Facebook or that on Facebook, and they say, oh, white privilege doesn't exist, that sort of thing. And I want to say to them, this is how I want you to understand this. As a white person in America in 2020, I don't have to worry about driving a nice car through a bad part of town and getting pulled over because of the color of my skin, but other people do. And that's what white privilege is being able just to walk outside of a house and not have to worry about being harassed by policemen. So I have gotten involved in this protest. I have been out there a couple nights already walking with peaceful protesters. And I just want to say, you can not only believe that all lives matter, you can believe Black lives matter, you can support the police, you can support your neighbors, you can defend our Constitution, and you can stand up for the rights of individuals. So that's what I believe in 30 seconds or less going into this.
Thank you.
So, Chris, if I could tackle that,
please.
I think it's really a complicated question to a large extent. I want to dovetail into the Black Lives Matter piece first, because when I say Black Lives Matter, I'm coming from a standpoint that historically as Black people, we don't receive justice, and we have not received justice, particularly when you look in the criminal justice system. And so to put the moniker of all lives matter really, I believe, just discounts the historical precedent that we have experienced as a people in this country. And so, I just wanted to definitely put that in context around why people are really, really laser focused on Black lives. The thing I would say is that as it relates to the police, I think it's very, very interesting that we ask individuals to support the police. I think I am in favor of supporting individual officers, but I do think that there needs to be a serious discussion around policing and what that looks like, because I don't believe that I can support policing in its current state. We have been saying for decades, if not centuries, what is happening when the cameras aren't on. And we've been rejected, we've been called liars, people have been killed. And even when we've watched these things, Christian, I remember watching Rodney King get beat mercilessly by 8 officers. Traffic stops get escalated into just spaces and places that are just ridiculous for people to lose their lives. So I can't support policing in its current state. I think there does need to be reform. And I think there needs to be serious discussion around that.
Do you have ideas about what kind of reforms could be implemented?
Yeah, actually I do. And so I think we're using, first off, demilitarizing. One, I don't necessarily believe that a one-day diversity class does anything for anybody, whether you're talking about the police or corporate America and all that. It doesn't, that's not what it is. But I think we have to look at our institutions and we have to deconstruct those institutions. So the institution of policing has to be deconstructed. You do have to, in my opinion, start from scratch. You cannot think that you can change the way, manipulate this current system as is. So I do think that you have to start over. I think the term police should not be used. We say public safety or safety advocates or
peace officers.
That does something like that. Peace officers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that in other towns. Yeah. Public safety.
I think we should even look at weaponry. Should officers actually be walking around? What sort of weapons should they have access to on their person? So there are lots of things that we could put on the table. I don't think it's these specific items.
Go ahead, Janice.
A couple things. I think we saw this with COVID, and we see this with Black Lives Matter. The most disadvantaged communities suffer the most. So why Black Lives Matter is because they've suffered the most. They've suffered for 400 years, and it needs to stop. And if you created a system that was designed to favor a certain class of people, there's your problem. Everything, just like Commissioner Jerrell said, has to be looked at, scrapped. White people need to drop their guard, be willing to totally start from ground zero and say, how do we build equity in our communities? And how do we build in the safeguards to where Black Lives Matter and they actually matter? And not doing military style training for police officers is where we start, using military style tactics like boxing and cornering people in a way that would agitate crowds. That's unnecessary. You don't do that with civilians. You should not use chemical weapons on civilians. That should never happen in a democracy. If that's effed up, the commissioner should not have his job right now. He authorized chemical warfare on civilians.
Who shouldn't have their job?
The commissioner of our Charlotte Police Department should have been fired.
The chief of police?
The chief of police.
Okay.
Yes, he should be gone. Should be gone. You have to set an example, and the first thing you do is from the top down. The body dies from the head down, not the toes up. And he authorized chemical warfare on civilians. That is where our problem is your leadership. When they allow that and they look the other way and justify it, when these people were unarmed, nobody was hurting anything. They were just up late. Well, yeah. You don't have curfew either.
Jenny, Commissioner Jerrell, I think resonates. I know it resonates with me and many people who work and have worked, and all of us at work or have worked in the professional private sector. And I think if we approach this as our professional police are a professional organization, they should be treated like a professional organization. And when they have challenges with their customers, which we are their customers, then there needs to be some type of reform or some type of shakeup. And I would agree that I do believe that I respect police, grown up, you know, as a young person, knowing to respect your firemen, your law enforcement, your teachers, those people, those public servants you're taught, but it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be held accountable, you know, to certain standards.
And
of
that
the
does not
public.
give them a pass to abuse people either.
Yes. Yes. So I do think that this situation is resonating with many people who are maybe not black or brown, but maybe who work in our professional banking industry, insurance industry, a lot of the industries that have moved here. And the way they operate their organization is when they have challenges, they look at that challenge and they decide, all right, this is something that we need to take a look at and reform or whatever. You know, I used the term the other day, defund police. I don't necessarily mean take all their money away. What I meant is defund the sections of them that are no longer necessary, like chemical weapons, like military training, or those kind of things. So I don't know if does anybody want to add to that?
Yeah, I will. One of the things when we started organizing the march last Thursday, when I woke up and said, "Oh, we need to have a march out here in Valentine," and I had been down to the marches downtown. I was at Beatty's Ford that Friday night. I just happened to leave before the ruckus started. And I was at both the marches that Sunday. And so when I thought, okay, we need to have a march. One of the things that I felt that, okay, what's going to be done after the march? Because I mean, Black folks, we've been marching for, I mean, how long? And you know, and it's like it's the same old, same old. A Black person gets shot by the police. We start marching. There's ruckus, you know, between the police and the protesters. The city council people set up this task force. You know, nothing happens. It goes away. Next person gets shot by the police. We march. Ruckus with the police, task force, nothing. And I decided
cycle.
It's got to be right. That cycle. It's got to be something different. That we got to do something different. So one of the things that my team, because I just give a shout out to Victoria Wasaki and Robin Nolan, Carolyn Ellaby, and Rachel Saylor, who basically signed up with me, and we just started putting this thing together. The things we said, that's got to be a next step after we march. It's got to be a step. So we created this document, the next steps document. We encourage everybody to go to that document. It's on our events page. That's the thing that we pushed even at the march, because this is what we need to do after we march. And what I said to that crowd, if they do not do the next steps, this has all been for nothing. If we do not do the work to get the systemic change made, we can march all day long. It's just it's going to be the next person who gets shot, which may be me or Mark, you know, and my nephews, you know, and so we have to stop being just relying on instant gratification and changing the system, changing the government. It's the long game. So people have to get off Facebook posting good messages and start. We've given you a document to get you started. Now you need to go do it. We need you to do it. And so if the systemic changes are made, we won't get to this mess anymore.
Yep.
Some things we need to, you know, even the whole thing of defunding the police. We're not talking about disbanding the police. And this is my first time even, you know, using the word, but it's about what the hell happened. Yep. We don't want to spend money in this freaking country. It's our tax money. We don't want to spend money on mental health issues. We don't want to spend money to help the homeless. I've done work with the homeless. We don't want to spend money. And then we're putting all this responsibility on the police. That's why I'm in support of the police. It is unfair to expect the police to be the social worker, to be the homeless monitor, to do all of that. We need to start putting some doggone money into these other issues. That's why we need to shift some money to some of the issues that's needed in the community. That's what we're talking about. When we talk about force defund, it's not getting rid of the police. That's stupid.
Over 40% of the budget is spent on policing.
Pardon me?
Over 40% of the budget is spent on policing.
I just heard that. That sounds ludicrous to me. It's like, really?
It is.
But we're not putting money into the community, and that needs to stop. So, Mark, anything you can do, guys, to help that on that end? I'm looking for some action.
And actually, I would like to ask him that, but I just want to say, and Kyle, I know you want to add in real quickly, but Janice, one of the things that I thought was so wonderful about the march on Sunday, I was able to come back from my camping trip, since I'm social distancing from all y'all, and I was able, yeah, I was able to come back in time to shower, change, and run over to the march. And at the very end of the march, and everyone gathered back together, and I don't know if it was you or it was someone else, they said, now, I don't want y'all going and doing crazy stuff after this, or it was something to that effect, like, now go home, go home, don't be Rugrats, whatever. And I heard a couple of like the young people go, oh, like, what? I was like, that's really good advice to tell people. Listen,
Black woman speaking truth. Enough of this tearing up stuff. We're not trying to tear up stuff. You want to spend some energy, go do the next steps. Hey, that'll keep you busy. You don't need to be out tearing up stuff. And I was serious about that. Go home and start doing the next steps. And I did check the next day with the policeman out here, with Captain Wagner and Ryan. Nothing happened.
Nothing.
We in Disneyland out here half the time anyway. But people tear up stuff.
Kyle, you want to add something?
You guys are Disneyland out there, Janice.
Yeah, we are, Tom. We are.
But Kristen, can I add something?
Please.
So, a couple of comments. One of the things, from a personal perspective, I'm not a believer in incrementalism or gradualism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When I first ran for office, I was a change agent, and I've tried to hold truth to that, and not become a part of the system, which I think is part of the problem. And so, but one of the things that I notice is people say they want change, and when you deliver that, they say, whoa, wait a second, or when you offer suggestions, right?
Mm-hmm.
As it relates to the police in a generalized context, guys, I want us to really have this discussion and understand what we see from all of these videos and all of the information that we have is a culture that is not relegated to one portion of the country, one community, the South, the North, East, West, Midwest. It is a virus that is permeated, and it's a culture, country, all over the country, right? And so when I look at this, the reason why I say yes, we have to start from scratch is because it's a virus. It's a culture. This is something that you cannot think that you can keep the same components in place and get the change that you want. The other thing is, for decades, Black people have been doing what's called the talk. The talk. Now, if you don't know what that is, tap your Black friend and they'll explain exactly what the talk is that we have to deliver to our children, interact with the police. If there were some really good cops out here and all this other stuff, and they were dominating the force, there would be no need for me to deliver the talk to my children, my nephew, my nieces, or even for me to, when I get pulled over, turn on my dome light, put my hands up like this or out the window, have to tell every movement that I'm making, my wallet is black. So we've got to be honest about this conversation. If it was only 1% bad apples, there would not be any need for the talk, guys. There would be no need at all. So I'm not saying that there are not good officers, but even when you have a culture within an entity, there are specific changes that have to be made if you're going to deconstruct that. And so that's all I'm saying. Think about those components that I'm bringing up there.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I agree that that's got to be, wow. It's hard work that's got to be done. It's hard work that's got to be done. And it's very important that the community gets involved, all the community gets involved. One of the things I said to my white friends, almost about a week ago, right after this thing happened with George, Mr. Floyd, it still embraced my heart. And one of the things I sent to them, because people were sending me text messages and so forth, And I said that, we need the white community to take up the baton. I mean, we've been working on this since Jim Crow days. We need you to take up the baton. And one of the things I said, and I posted it also on Facebook, don't ask me what to do. Because over the months, years, people say, well, what should we do? And I said, don't. Because I believe that the white community know what you need to do in your community, what you need to do and what you need to say to get this mess stopped. I believe that. I can't tell you, I don't have that privilege. But I believe that in the white community, families, individuals, they know what they need to say to their family, to their friends, to their children, to their associates. They know what you need to say in your community. You know what you need to do to get this mess stopped.
And Janice, and Janice also in the Latinx community.
Okay.
We have to have that conversation as well, because there are many people in our Latinx community that check the white box because they consider themselves white, because back in the day, as my dad used to say, the white people sat in the front of the theater, the Latinx people sat behind them, and the African Americans sat up top. So the Latinx people always thought, well, at least I'm not black. I'm sitting with them, not knowing they still didn't like you either. You were just sitting in the back. So yes, and so there's this culture ingrainedness in us to try to fit in with the whiteness so they can treat us better. And as a result of that, within our Latinx community, we have a lot of light-skinned Latinx individuals that consider themselves white and have the same rhetoric within our own families about darker people within our own community, our Afro-Latinos in our own community.
Yeah.
Kyle, do you want to add something real quickly?
There's actually quite a few things that I want to add.
Sure, 30 seconds.
All right. Well, one, Breonna Taylor, that should motivate every single white person out there to get out there and do something, because those police officers went into her house with the intention of killing somebody, and it didn't matter what color that person was in the bed. That EMS was shot dead sleeping in her own bed because the police went into her house under a no-knock warrant, which violated her Fourth Amendment rights, and killed her in her sleep in her bed. And that could have happened to anybody. So if for nothing else, get out there and protect your Fourth Amendment rights. Secondly, your First Amendment rights of freedom of speech are also at stake. Get out there, flood the streets. These are our streets. These are not streets which belong to the police. Next, police forces are made up of people of all colors, not just white people. Our police chief in Charlotte and many of our captains and majors and colonels and all the higher ranking folks are, a multitude of races, not just white folks. And when you become a police officer, it's like you enter into a brotherhood, and it doesn't necessarily matter what color you are, but what Mark was talking about, that ingrained idea of how to treat people is taught universally to all policemen. Now, what can we do just as individuals? There's three things that I want to talk about, which are tangible ideas of what we can do to change some of these systemic problems in our police force. Number one is qualified immunity to cover only property and to extend only to great bodily injury or death under a qualified system, much like we have degrees of murder in this country. So if a policeman goes into something with forethought of malice, with an idea of how this is going to go down, if they intentionally commit the murder, I do not think qualified immunity should protect them. I think that should be a stepped tier, and I think that we should look at the different types of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, those things, have those correlate to how this qualified immunity may protect policemen. It should protect them from damaging property, but not hurting people on purpose. Secondly, I think that as you talked about, Christian, you said police consider themselves to be a professional organization. Well, what other professions do we have in this country? Basically, we have doctors, lawyers. What do they have to carry? They have to carry malpractice insurance. Why should taxpayers be footing the bill for racist police killing people? They shouldn't. Those police officers should be the ones held responsible. And I tell you something else, when you're thinking about committing some stupid racist ass BS, and you know that that's going to cost you your family, your house, your home, all your earthly possessions, and it's not going to be the state that's paying for you, You're going to think twice before you do something stupid. And lastly, we had a vote the other night by Charlotte City Council to defund chemical weapons. And I've taken a lot of crap for calling them chemical weapons, but that's what they are. You can call it an agent, but it's still a chemical weapon. It's something you're being used to hurt somebody with. Now, they defunded that for 2021 only. And I assure you, Charlotte has an ample supply of all of these chemical agents stockpiled. And that's not going to stop them from using it. We have no guarantees that I'm aware of at this point from Chief Putney that CMPD will stop using, only from Sheriff McFadden that the Sheriff's Department will quit using it. Therefore, my final recommendation would be only allowing the use of chemical weapons against people in emergency situations, which means in order for the police to be able to use a chemical weapon, whether it be a capsaicin round, which is the chemical inside of the paintballs that have the pepper spray in them, whether it's a smoke grenade, whether it's one of these tear gas grenades, any of these items which are chemicals which can go into your body and hurt you on a permanent basis, those things should be authorized only for use under a declared emergency from the city or county. And their use should be cleared first by our commission or city council before any of those agents are allowed on our streets against our citizens.
Well, listen, Kyle Kirby, I have said this to you before. I miss Republicans like you who actually give us some suggestions. I mean, really, there was a time when we had Republicans, and this is not really a political show, but I do miss a time when we have Republicans that actually gave us suggestions on how to fix the problems instead of some of the other stuff. So thank you for saying that. So let's pivot to a person who can actually vote on those kind of things. Commissioner Jerrell, what does that sound like, or what do you think?
So it's interesting. I think one of the perspectives that I think is really important, and particularly when we have a discussion on race, one of the things that we haven't done in this country is to, before we can even implement those things, we can implement those things and we would still have the same outcomes, I believe. I don't believe that the outcomes would change because
one outcome would have changed. On Tuesday night, nobody would have gotten tear gassed. I can say that if those were not allowed, but under the exception of emergency declaration. That's the only thing I'll say about that. I don't mean to. I apologize.
Okay. No worries. Generally speaking, though, when you talk about use of force, particularly against African Americans, I don't believe the outcomes would change. I think we would still see, the deaths and the interactions the way we see them. And so one thing that typically gets excluded from the conversation is, one, including African Americans in the conversation, right? So we are the ones that should be at the table to say, hey, here are things that we believe would be solutions to help, right? So starting there, I think is the right starting point, because if I start through a lens of a white male, my perspective will be lost, right? And no matter how well intentioned, right? Or no matter how great it sounds. So that's number one. Number two, South Africa, as we all know, did a very interesting thing when they came out of apartheid, and they had the Truth and Reconciliation. They were able to really have a discussion, and I think one of the things that we lack in this country, and the things that I would love to bring to our community, and I'm dropping it here, is somewhat of a Truth and Reconciliation sort of council or meeting, to where we can really acknowledge. I think one of the things as an African American, it's very rare, and this is one of the first where I have noticed that our white brothers and sisters have really started to acknowledge the impact of not only slavery, but the systemic and institutionalized racism. And then, but the leader that they follow in number 45 won't even acknowledge systemic racism exists, which is it's not surprising to me, because that is the attitude of so many. but it's the truth. We need to have those conversations, but I think they have to start with African Americans and then filter down to the rest of the community as we talk solutions.
Commissioner Jerrell, I completely believe with you. In the many years before today, I spent in the hospitality industry at the corporate level. And one of our first rules was when you're trying to, whether it was an employee issue, whether it was a customer service issue, whatever the issue was, ask the people that it impacts what you need and what your suggestions are. That seems to be the first rule of trying to fix any issue, is to ask those people. And I used to say this all the time, is that when someone comes up to me, whether it's a woman, whether it's a person of color, whether it's an LGBT member, or even if it's a white male or brother or sister, and tells me, this is how I feel, this, believe them. They're telling you how they, don't say, that's not what happened. That's not the truth. That's not what happened. But with that being said, I know we're very limited on time, and you've got to get going here. What Charlotte City Council has tried to do some things to kind of nip away at some of these things. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us about the county commission?
Well, I would, and thank you for that opportunity. And guys, I want to say thank you for the discussion. What a tremendous panel, and I appreciate being a part of this. One of the things that we need to do on the county side, and so next Tuesday, I'll be bringing forward a resolution declaring racism as a public health crisis. When you look at the items that we're responsible for as county commissioners, as it relates to thanks, Kyle, as it relates to funding education, healthcare, our social services, parks and rec, and all of those items, and you connect those with the current outcomes that we see with African Americans and those that are most vulnerable and marginalized, there is a direct correlation with racism, the systemic and institutionalized racism that we certainly have talked about today. And so that's one of the things that we have to do. And then it goes beyond that, because as we make decisions, we really have to make decisions underneath that backdrop, understanding what disparity looks like, how disparity is impacting our community and the effects on not just the Black community, but all communities. What does it mean when you have folks that are disproportionately impacted by COVID? Our Latinx community right now, 37% of our COVID cases are our Latino brothers and sisters. And so that has an impact on the rest of this community when you have a group that is suffering like that. And so we have to have that lens. That's one step that we certainly want to take. Also on next Wednesday, June 17th, which is the anniversary of the Mother Emanuel Church shooting, where you guys know that my program are very, very close. And his sister was, her life was tragically taken during that time. But we are doing a Black Men United. It is for everyone. A rally and march starting at Marshall Park on June 17th at 4 p.m. We'll rally at Marshall Park. Councilman Graham will do a keynote address, and we will march in the street to show united and denounce, show that we're united, and to denounce racism, and really have an overt commitment as leaders in this community to do something. And so those are a couple of things. And the final point is, Christian, and I apologize for taking up so much time.
Oh, that's fine.
Every day I go into the government center, it's never lost on me that the shoulders that I stand on that allows me to go into that building in the capacity that I do. The government center is located right next to our courthouse. That was a building that was designed for Mark Jerrell to be a part of, was the courthouse, not necessarily the government center. And when I sit at that dais on Tuesday nights or any other time that I get that opportunity, I take it very seriously. And it's never, ever lost on me how sacrificed they have lost their lives for me to have that opportunity. And I take it as a sacred call to bring justice on behalf of the people that I represent and the people in this community. And it is an honor and a privilege to go there. And it's never lost on me. And I always sit down with I write a quote every single time I sit there, and it's a line from Tupac. And Tupac says, it's funny, when it rains, it pours. They got money for wars, but can't feed the poor. And I literally write it every single time that I sit at the dais or before every meeting, because again, that's the lens that I want to come from. I always right, but I'll tell you this, I just want to get it right. And my heart is in the right place. So I just wanted to say thank you for having me. Thank you guys for the discussion. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Jerrell, for joining us once again. I know your time is valuable, but in 15 seconds, can you answer, and it's hard for me to answer this, but I had spoken with Janice about this yesterday. The marches and protests that we're seeing today, in comparison to 2018, 2016, Rodney King, do you see that arch of justice? Do you see differences in this time than last time? Okay.
I do. I think it's certainly more of a coalition. It's a broad-based coalition where you see not just, you see it's multicultural, it's broad-based, it's from all sectors and all walks of life standing up for justice.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Janice, I mean, do you see a difference in?
And as we were talking yesterday, I guess since I've been marching, I've seen a diversity of people that's been in the crowds with me, but I had to ask some friends of mine. My surrogate mother, Connie Green Johnson, was telling me, oh, it's different, it's different. I was like, what? And then I had to ask another friend of mine who, Larry Wood, who was a part of the struggle and an activist back in the early, I guess the 80s and so forth, and did some work even with Jesse Jackson and some others. And I asked him, so what is it that, because I was not having any hope. And he explained that in his opinion, he said it is different. He is different. He said now more the white people are in the streets marching. He said white people out there marching, themselves. I mean, a good example is Valentine. Valentine turned down, over 1,000 people showed up out here, and down in Waxhaw. So I'm having hope now because I believe white folks, and it's a diversity of folks, but especially white folks have finally have said they're fed up. They have started to stand up, and we need you to have some stamina. Go for the long game. It's not about.
The reason I asked that, when Jenny and I went to one last week, and I've been to about 4 of them since then, I always see the activists that we normally see at other events. I see them, and I always see young white women cluster, some of them because they think it's kind of exciting to be out there, and most of them are actually the young millennial women who are more diverse. So they've grown up with a little bit more diversity and so forth. But this is the first time I've actually seen clusters of young white men and with their friends. And it wasn't just their girlfriend dragging them out or their boyfriend, whatever. I actually saw them there with their signs. And of course, my Democratic Libertarian was, oh, they're CMPD spies. That was kind of my thing. So I watched them. And they were,
Christian.
Well, hey, that's the Jeff Scott in me. It's a conspiracy, conspiracy. And I watched them, and Jenny and I were watching them, and these were young people that I would not normally see at this kind of thing. And I was like, wow, this is really resonating with, it's different. Then I saw, middle-aged white couples with their young kids there as well. So I have seen a little different, and I wanted to hear from your perspective because, I see that in Charlotte kind of changing a little bit, but I don't know, Cal, as the CMPD spy.
Hey, Christian, I got to jump off.
Okay.
Thanks for having me, my friend.
Thank you, Mark.
Take care, everybody. Be safe.
Yes.
Mask up.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Mask up.
My hashtag mask up Mech.
That's right. Mask up. Kyle, do you see a difference?
As the resident CMPD spy.
Yes.
Yeah, there is a difference. There is a difference for sure. I mean, just to go back to what Janice said, Keith Lamont Scott died in Charlotte. Government did basically nothing, So with this, people are actually getting out there and realizing, with things like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, I'm next. I could be next. My friends could be next. My wife could be next. My mixed children could be next. My, adopted niece could be next. We have to stand up. We have to stand up for our rights as human beings. We need to be out there. I've been twice. I went Wednesday after the corralling incident by CMPD. And then I joined the NAACP last Monday, and we walked from downtown Romare Bearden Park all the way up to NODA. And I'll tell you this, as a fat man, that was some commitment. And I want to tell you, never once did I feel fearful.
Yeah.
Never once did I feel that I was being eyed as a CMPD spy. Now that might have happened, but I don't think it did. I never once felt in any way like my life was in any kind of bodily danger or anything like that. The only thing I saw was people out there for a community purpose, showing love, showing respect, showing empathy, showing understanding, showing support. And the only time that I ever became fearful was when riot police showed up, because I know that that's where the violence was going to come from. And, I know that we're drawing to an end here, but they talk about the protesters being antagonistic. The presence of someone in full on body armor with a giant baton is antagonistic.
One thing I wanted to.
By all means, Jenny, go ahead. How are you, dear? Good to see you again.
I'm good. I haven't.
Happy Pride Month.
Thank you. Yeah, it is Pride Month. I'm wearing my rainbow. But one of the things that Mark Jerrell touched on this a little bit, and I think in our country, everything that we do culturally is based around violence. Whether it is segregation is violence,
cowboy
war
culture
is violence. Cowboy culture, where we're swinging around from chandelier to chandelier with our sword drawn, and we always have to end it with violence. The war on drugs is not only racist, but it's also violent, and it doesn't reduce the harm. We don't have any less drugs in our country now than we did in 1970 when this all started. So we have to dismantle all the billions and trillions of dollars we've spent on war and violence culture, because that's what's created this. This has created multiple generations of people raised in a violent culture. And that comes from the federal government, from the top down. You can see how a family or a culture thinks by the way they spend their money. And we've had trillions of dollars for war, but not trillions of dollars for our people. And in that same time frame, if we'd have said, instead of building nuclear weapons like crazy in the 80s under Reagan and Clinton and everybody else, and it's a Republican and a Democrat problem. So both parties have funded war and violence. We have to have a conversation as a Democrat, and Kyle's you as a Republican, the war no more, violence no more. That could not be the first go-to, just like in Breonna Taylor, where they went in guns draw, guns ablazing, and they assassinated her.
Yep, it didn't matter who was in that bed.
How scary is that? And I mean, there was no gun battle. She just got murdered, assassinated.
Well, Jenny, that's been also, I know we've had these conversations on the show before, and we're running out of time here. We only got about 5 more minutes left. But one of the concerns that I've had in the Democratic Libertarian part of me is you would think that these protests and these marches, that the natural allies would be libertarians, people who believe in less police presence.
Yes.
The official libertarian position is defund police, defund ICE, defund military complex. That's the official libertarian. but the libertarian part of the Republican Party, like the Matthew Ridenhowers, like the Stony Rushings, like the ones who had those reopen people that were saying, government reopen us, you would think that they would be marching with these individuals because they're.
I am.
Well, yeah, you are. So I hope to see more of them marching because
I couldn't agree with you more. It's a natural ally, and the wedge, to be honest with you, and here we go, the crazy Republican, but the wedge, 95% is literally put there by the media. Because if you look at what the media covers, they cover people busting out windows, burning cars. They cover only the bad stuff and try to make fear the main thing. So that's what Jenny's talking about, is when she says the go-to thing is violence. That's what the media inspires, is they want all the Republicans, they want the white people, they want the people that, feel a certain way to not understand what's going on to the people they live next door to. They want you to hate your neighbor, and we need to make sure we love each other.
And Kyle, that message is working. I have my own family members, a very, very close family member who I won't name, who has been posting how upset they are about all this rioting and this looting and, these kids and doing this. And this person, of course, is a person of faith. And of course, I can't say this because this is a very close family member. I mean, I wanted to say, you mean like when Jesus threw open that table because he was upset? That was what was
in the temple. Yep.
Yes. So they were so focused on the looting and the rioting. I'm like, you realize it. There's other issues, this, but anyway, I digest. They're probably going to watch this. I'm going to get a text here very, very quickly saying, how
Can I
you
say
do this. Please.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
What Kyle said, and Kyle, it's really good to meet you on this.
It's nice to meet you too.
My team and I, we were talking about how the fact that, we were prepared for the media. I was prepared to give an interview and so forth. And we were talking about how, it's really interesting that the reporters didn't interview us. Interesting.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to a friend of mine, one of my precinct members this morning. We did a walk this morning. We were talking about it. And she said, well, then the media wants to cover the negative stuff. Valentine marching, that was news to me. But
me too.
They did not. We got a little bit of coverage, but it looks to me like that was downplayed to me. And I also want to say that I did put the link to the next steps document in the chat box there.
Yeah, I would say get out there and meet these people that the media is painting one way, and make up your mind for yourself. Don't be told how to think. That's the problem. Is the police have been told how to think. We've been born a certain way and told how to think since we were born. We need to break out of this box. We need to think for ourselves. We're all adults and we are capable of coming to a logical conclusion. And when you get out there and you see these people and you talk to them and you see what's really going on the ground, like in Ballantyne, like in Noda, like in downtown, you'll see that the story is a whole nother bag. It's a whole nother thing.
And one of my co-organizers is a Republican.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
I don't doubt it.
Yes. But and this is not unique to Charlotte, but this is the city that everyone turns their television station on when there's a chance of rain. Look at this thunderstorm. There's a tornado warning 40 miles from here. Everyone go to the middle of their house. Listen, I understand that because I'm afraid I'm afraid a big tree is going to fall on me with all these crazy big trees. So I'm one of those people. Listen, we're at the end of the show. I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you're on Zoom, if you can just stay on just a little bit because we're going to close Facebook. But before I do that, I do want to say, I want to thank Baby Trump Pinata for joining us. He has joined us on every show, virtual show. Once again, he has a Medicare for All sign. He's got a Moms About Action sign. He's got a Cynthia. He's been passing out Cynthia Wallace for Congress palm cards. And so he is active in what he is doing. And he's borrowing my wig, by the way, just to let you know. You see that
I'm sure you have more than one. I'm sure you have more than one.
There might be one on the next show. So thank you for joining us. I would be remiss if I did not thank our good friend and neighbor, Tara Long. she dropped a package at my house, which is always scary to me when someone drops a package at my house. But she dropped us, Jenny, she dropped us some new mugs. There's about 6 of them in
Oh,
here.
wow.
And I think this is for Mama Ruth. This is Mama Needs Some Coffee. So when we finally are able to get back together again, we will have a bunch of new mugs. I also want to share once again.
Hey, Christian, I want to jump in real quick.
Yes.
I wanted to thank some of our viewers that weighed in on Facebook. Secretary Colette Alston weighed in with some very important dialogue. Mama Ruth weighed in several times and said she missed us. Shirley Scott weighed in on some great things, some very powerful words being said on our Facebook feed as the show was rolling. I didn't want to not ignore our viewers. I'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge those. And thank you, Colette Alston. She had some very constructive dialogue on there. We appreciate you watching.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for myself. Okay. All right. Well, listen, thank you everyone for joining us. I do want to once again thank Commissioner Jerrell and everyone who's been promoting Mask Up Mech. We try to practice face coverings every time we go around. We found this really neat one that took us 6 weeks to get, has a filter inside. I do know at Walmart, they are now selling temporary masks that are available. So if you need those, also, you don't have to spend a bunch of money on disinfectant and hand wipes and stuff. You can make your own like we showed last week. All you need is some rubbing alcohol, which you may not be able to find, but if you go to Walgreens and CVS, they get them every Tuesday, I understand. And you pour that into a bottle, fill up with a little water, you have disinfectant spray. You can also just buy very cheap baby wipes at Walmart, at Harris Teeter, wherever you shop. Pour a cup of this in the baby wipes, and it makes it into disinfectant wipes as well. This wonderful lady at Costco showed me how to do all these things. So we're in the end of the show. I want to thank everyone for joining us. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Kyle Kirby. Please come on whenever you'd like to again. Janice, it's wonderful to see you virtually, but also to see you on Sunday. Please come back on anytime. I wasn't able to read your full bio. It's a wonderful. I know you are from South Carolina, attended Winthrop University.
Originally, yes.
Lived in Chicago, Shawtown for a while. You've been living in Valentine, and once again, you did organize the event on Valentine Family and Kids March for Justice, which had over 1,000 residents in South Charlotte, which is a wonderful event. But more importantly, you also have a startup business called Janice D. Robinson Enterprises, whose mission will be to provide affordable housing opportunities for persons with disability and for persons in low and middle income households. So please, if you have a chance on Facebook, please post those links, and everybody post your socials on there, and we'd be happy to, and share the show, as much as we can to have as much diversity on here. We're welcome to. So we're going to end Facebook Live. So if you're on Zoom, stay on. We're just going to wave.
Thank you.
And goodbye, Facebook. Yay. Oh, hold on a second. That one there.